Hey man. The moment she stops being the gravity of your life is the moment everything quietly starts to fall apart for her. You do it without theatrics. You do it without a speech. You do it by choosing yourself more than you choose reaction. You stop bending your days around her messages. You stop explaining every silence like it needs permission. Texts become efficient instead of dramatic. Conversations lose their emotional weight. Your energy stops rearranging to fill her mood. That shift is surgical. It is small at first. Short replies, fewer calls, a missed plan, tiny withdrawals that add up. She senses the change before she understands it. Confusion arrives first. She asks herself if she said something wrong. She watches your typing bubble and feels it stop earlier than before. She looks for patterns because patterns are proof that control still exists. When she can't find them, she tightens and searches harder. Her confidence was built on predictability. Now unpredictability feels like a threat. She believed time worked in her favor. She believed you would wait while she explored options. She believed loyalty had no deadline. Those assumptions collapse quietly. There is no dramatic breakup moment to blame. That absence is the punishment. It is not loud. It is a thinning presence that says everything without noise. She realizes someone else occupies the space she once owned. That realization hits like cold water. Regret follows confusion, not the other way around. She re-examines the past as if searching for a secret exit. Every complaint she voiced gets reinterpreted as a missed opportunity. The stillness she mocked now reads as strength. The tension she called clinginess now looks like devotion. She rewrites memories to soften her role in the breakup. Memory becomes an ally when ego needs protecting. But facts don't change just because she edits them in her head. Seeing you calm with someone else cracks something inside her. It is not jealousy at first. It is the panic of losing influence. She thrived on your emotional reactions. Those reactions validated her power. When reaction stops, so does her certainty. She begins to probe with small messages disguised as casual check-ins. A nostalgic emoji, a harmless memory, a sudden question about a place you both knew. These are not innocent. They are tests wrapped in friendliness. She wants to know if your pulse still responds. Your detached replies are the verdict. If you answer with equal distance, the test fails. Silence does the rest. She falls into mirror work, scanning your social feed, counting smiles, timing captions. Watching you live well without her is a new kind of pain. It is disorienting because it disproves her plan. Her narrative required your suffering to preserve her pride. Your peace refuses to participate in her storyline. It exposes the truth. You moved on internally long before you moved on visibly. That internal shift is the hard cut. She can tolerate anger. She can tolerate drama. But indifference removes the stage. Without an audience, her old methods crumble. She starts comparing every new presence to what you offered. Other men seem louder and shallower. And everything shifts. This loss of control doesn't announce itself. It creeps in through small cracks until the whole strategy feels useless. She measures you like a clock she once wound without thought. Now the hands move different. She expects a predictable pattern and finds improvisation instead. That unpredictability is the first real threat to her confidence. She had rehearsed a script where your devotion was constant and her curiosity harmless. When the script vanishes, she scrambles for alternatives. She leans on charm, on explanations, on casual defenses that sound practiced. Every tactic becomes louder as subtlety stops working. She begins to micromanage chance and manufacture contact. Random texts become rituals of control. Those messages are thinly veiled attempts to steer your orbit back toward hers. She offers memories like bait. She sprinkles compliments that carry calculations. Each line tests whether your heart still flickers for her. The failure of those tests is a kind of grief she didn't anticipate. It is not simply disappointment. It is a collapse of the internal math she used to justify leaving. She counted on your patience as credit. Now that credit dwindles, her ego thrives on an invisible leverage, the knowledge that your attention can be won even after absence. When that leverage dissolves, she reacts with urgency. She starts interpreting silence as a challenge rather than a boundary. She confuses your calm for weakness and assumes provocation will provoke a return. Her moves become performative. She stages moments meant to be seen by you or people you both know. Public displays create pressure to respond. Those displays are a bet that social proof will coax a reaction out of you. But social proof cannot force genuine feeling. It only pressures the image. Behind these tactics lies a startling vulnerability. She hates being unimportant. Importance kept her anchored. Without it, she edits her persona outward toward whatever might fetch attention. That shift creates a restlessness that shows in late-night scrolling and obsessive comparisons. She catalogs posts and maps them to moods. Every smile, every achievement, every quiet caption becomes evidence she is losing terrain. That evidence fuels attempts to intervene. She will call mutual friends. She will ask questions. She will invent reasons to cross paths. Each move is an appeal disguised as coincidence. As attempts fail, she grows defensive. Anger masks the fear that she cannot control the outcome anymore. Blame replaces curiosity. But blame only fills the noise. The deeper damage is the fracture in her identity. She built part of herself around being necessary to you. Now necessity evaporates and she is forced to reckon with an empty role. She experiences a widening gap between how she wants to be seen and how she actually exists. That gap demands action. Some women double down on performance. Others step into the slow work she avoided. Reflection, humility, change. Either outcome flows from the same source. Sudden loss of influence. Loss of influence triggers a realignment. Sometimes toward growth, sometimes toward denial. And while she maneuvers, you continue building something steady. The steadiness itself rewrites the balance of power. The quieter you become, the less room remains for her old strategy to work. The wound isn't dramatic. It's the sight of someone else living inside the small spaces she claimed. That view undoes her excuses. She watches another woman receive the gentle gestures she once owned. She sees the laugh that landed in your chest and knows she let it go. Recognition comes like a cold draft. It strips away the tidy stories she told herself. She studies ordinary actions now. A hand on your shoulder. A quiet joke. The way you soften when you listen. Those things used to be private confirmations. Now they look ordinary because they belong to someone else. Ordinary becomes the proof. Proof becomes panic. She tries to account for it. She lists moments where she pushed and moments where she withdrew. She counts the times her games succeeded and the times they failed. The ledger is merciless. Numbers don't care about intentions. They only show results. Results reveal that she misread the margins between care and complacency. Imitation follows inquiry. She practices tenderness like a rehearsed line. She calls with the right tone, times messages to seem effortless, drops details she once forgot. The moves are tidy but hollow. People sense when warmth is manufactured. The energy is off. You notice the difference even if you don't name it. When performance doesn't work, she leans on memory. She posts photos that look candid. She captions like she learned something. She resurrects moments that used to be sacred and makes them public. Nostalgia becomes a tool. It polishes the past and dulls the edges of her own choices. Then she gets strategic. She engineers moments where your paths cross. She appears at places you frequent and times you might stay. She stages coincidences and bets that proximity will trigger recognition. Public closeness is a blunt instrument. It pressures the environment to remind you of what you had. If proximity and posts fail, she tries social leverage. Mutual friends receive careful questions. Conversations are baited to surface your name. She creates interpersonal circuits designed to reroute attention back toward her. Manipulation disguises itself as concern. It smells like desperation. Beneath the tactics lies an exposed fragility. The core wound is not losing you. It's losing the role of someone who mattered without effort. Importance had been part of her identity. With it gone, she faces a question she avoided. Who is she without that gravity? Some answers are ugly. She doubles down on performance. She becomes louder, brighter, more visible. The show is meant to convince others and herself. Other answers are harder. She chooses the uncomfortable work of change. Therapy replaces pretense. Honesty replaces spin. Growth is slow, boring, and real. Either path reflects a truth. Influence can be lost but not always reclaimed. You can be invited back into someone's life, but the terms change. Trust, presence, and proof are now required. No headline gesture restores what patience built. In the end, she is left with choices shaped by consequence. She can chase a ghost or she can meet herself. Which path she takes tells you everything you need to know about whether she deserves a second seat in your life. Silence often reveals the truest intention. Memory is a liar when pride is in charge. She tweaks the script until it flatters her. Details are edited, omissions become explanations, and the record bends to preserve comfort. She trims the sharp parts and amplifies the gentle ones. In her version, the break wasn't carelessness, it was a deliberate discovery. She gives herself credit for foresight. Every narrative shift buys distance from responsibility. She picks scenes that paint her as the reasonable party. Moments she walked away are dressed as brave choices. Times she tested you are framed as honest searching. She casts your patience as enabling and your attempts to bridge as pressure. Those retellings defend an image that collapses under hard questions. This is not always an intentional trick. Minds bend to survive. When guilt knocks, she scavenges for explanations that make leaving look smart. Small irritations become character flaws in the retelling. Minor slights expand into patterns. Her memory tilts toward the version that spares shame. She starts renaming things. Labels soften guilt. Indifference becomes needed space. Neglect becomes self-care. Language reshapes how she views herself. A kinder phrase blunts the weight of bad choices. If the story sounds healthy, she can swallow it whole. Public performance follows. She rehearses how she'll explain the split to friends. She sculpts a version suitable for social feeds. Photos slide into place with captions about lessons learned. The act of repeating the story to others seals it inside her. Outside approval becomes evidence. Nod after nod makes the softened account feel official. Privately, the truth still nags. In front of people, she doubles down. Alone, she hears the contradiction. Two versions jostle for dominance. She favors the narrative that soothes ego. Discomfort gets muffled under louder insistence. She also flips cause and effect. Neutral moments are assigned motive. Your quiet is recast as withdrawal rather than boundary. Your reserve becomes a flaw instead of discipline. These shifts are neat fixes that let her sleep. They also shrink the chance she'll actually change. Romanticizing is the natural next beat. She isolates little gestures and blows them up into proof. One kind night becomes the evidence of a soulful lover. Selective recall converts nuance into legend. The past turns into an exhibition curated for her comfort. When someone pushes back with facts, she answers with story. You changed becomes shorthand for her discomfort. Narrative becomes shield. The rewritten version is armor she wears against accountability. Repeat the tale enough and it solidifies. Repetition ossifies memory into identity. The story stops being a defense and starts being the truth she references for choices. Growth stalls because lessons never land when they're retold as righteousness. But history resists smoothing forever. Timestamps, witnesses, and steady behavior start to poke holes. Small records, a dated message, a friend's memory, press against the softened version. Reality is patient. It outlasts excuses. Now she stands at a crossroads. Continue living behind the edited script or face the raw chronology and learn. One route keeps her trapped in justifications. The other forces humility and hard work. The harder road is the one that finally produces real change. Finally. Her tactics to push you away now become the ones she uses to pull you back. She sends the right song at the right hour, drops a memory that reads like a confession, times a message to land when she thinks you'll be vulnerable. Those moves are calculated, small, precise strikes meant to reopen old doors without admitting they were ever closed. Performance replaces apology. She knows the plays that once got a reaction, so she rehearses them. A casual mention of a place you loved together, a photo that looks accidental but is staged, a comment that sounds like curiosity but carries weight. It's not tenderness, it's strategy wearing familiarity like camouflage. She hopes comfort becomes curiosity, then contact, then attachment. When direct approaches fail, she shifts to softer probes. She showers your social circle with memories and hints, waiting for someone to pass back a sign. She offers mutual friends the version she prefers and asks gentle questions that are really invitations to report. The relay begins. A like here, a mention there, a message through an intermediary. It's a slow funnel designed to erode distance by degrees. Sometimes she tries vulnerability as currency. She tells a story about growth, frames her mistakes as lessons learned, and waits to see if your guard drops. She assumes authenticity equals forgiveness, that confession will convert into a second chance. If it rings tactical, resolve hardens. Escalation follows pattern. Small nudges become longer conversations. Casual check-ins turn into late-night texts that skim the edges of old intimacy. She flirts with nostalgia until you either mirror back or you don't. Each unanswered reach is a small defeat. Each returned message is a potential opening. She counts micro-victories like currency in a marketplace she hopes to re-enter. When subtlety fails, theatrics arrive. Public gratitude posts, declarations of transformation, attention-grabbing outings timed for visibility, these are gambits meant to force notice. She plays to an audience, betting that public momentum will pressure private response. It's loud, messy, and revealing. All these attempts mask a deeper fear, the terror of being irrelevant. Her actions are attempts to manufacture relevance where it once existed naturally. She mistakes motion for meaning, noise for connection. The louder she gets, the more obvious the absence beneath the noise becomes. There's a point when her efforts mirror the control she once exerted. The difference now is humility is asked for but not always offered. She wants entry without the work that built it, without time, without proof, without consistent presence. That expectation strains credibility. Real restoration requires months of steady proof, quiet consistency, and unshowy loyalty, not viral moments or empty promises anymore. You watch like a slow reveal. Attempts that once pulled you back now push you further. The rhythm of chase changes. Detachment becomes a mirror that shows whether her moves are real. Genuine remorse looks different from tactic-driven charm. Time separates performance from truth. If she truly commits, probes stop being ploys and start being practice. She chooses discipline over drama. She shows up in small ways without spectacle. That kind of return is earned, not demanded. It asks for patience, for proof, for consistent respect. Only then does the door begin to consider opening. She never expected your life to keep moving forward with the kind of quiet confidence she once mocked. It slips past her like a tide. No loud scenes. No public unraveling. Just steady progress that refuses to dramatize itself. What stings is that your calm does not demand explanation. It does not need her permission to be complete. She imagined you would crumble in her absence. Instead you plant roots and rise. That growth is its own indictment. Once she believed your pain would validate her choice. Now that calculation fails. The emptiness she expected to witness is filled with purpose. Your daily routine, once a map she could read, becomes a landscape she no longer recognizes. The routines that used to revolve around her fade and new priorities take their place. Those priorities are small things that accumulate. Early mornings. Unshared jokes. Quiet disciplines. They add up. They rearrange your life without announcement. She can handle noise. She can handle theatrics. Loud sorrow still keeps her relevant. It solicits answers and attention. But what she cannot manage is a life that keeps its center intact without calling her name. That kind of serenity leaves no target. It dissolves the patterns she relied on. When she witnesses you at ease, she understands two things at once. She miscalculated her leverage and she lost her mirror. Your composure reflects what she refused to match. Instead of sparking retaliation, it forces a reckoning. Her strategies, which once produced predictable outcomes, now feel obsolete. The lack of drama removes the stage where she excelled. With no audience, her influence shrinks. This produces a new kind of anguish. It is not a sharp wound that demands performance. It is a slow depletion that works through mimicry and habit. She starts to feel unmoored. The habits that gave her identity lose weight. She finds herself seeking validation in smaller places. The Instagram scroll becomes a ritual of measurement. A like, a caption, an unseen reaction. Each tiny metric becomes verdict. Her attempts to provoke a response look desperate because they are. She initiates contact with the tactics that once secured her position. She times messages for emotional pressure and paints nostalgia in warm tones. But the responses she gets are flat now. The flatness is louder than a fight. It's a statement: you no longer occupy the center. You've withdrawn the currency she depended on. That withdrawal forces a slow introspection. She can either double down on performance or accept an uncomfortable truth about herself. Performance creates noise. Noise masks shame for a time but does not rebuild trust. Growth, by contrast, asks for patience and evidence. Authentic change requires longer timelines and consistent acts. It requires days where nothing looks impressive but everything shifts inside. The real sting, ultimately, is not being missed but being irrelevant. Relevance is influence dressed in presence. When a man's presence no longer orbits a woman's life, the void is not simply loss, it is erasure. That erasure teaches a lesson that anger never could. You can be replaced not by another person but by a version of yourself that no longer needs validation. That version is the final form of consequence. Finally, comparison becomes a habit that eats at her. Every new face she dates is measured against you. She notices tone, the way someone listens, the patience that lingers after words. Other men bring spectacle, yours had measure. Small acts that once blended into the background now serve as standards. She expects a match and keeps finding shadows. That mismatch creates a slow grief. Each failed comparison sharpens regret. She begins to overanalyze ordinary interactions. A laugh with someone else becomes an inventory of losses. A casual message between you and another woman is a dossier she scrutinizes for meaning. The more she inspects, the more she contorts reality to fit her needs. It is a form of cognitive hunting. She searches for evidence that the world will confirm her importance. Confirmation rarely lands. Out in public, she watches with thin patience. Seeing your composure in company turns petty jealousy into existential dread. The contrast between who you are now and who she remembers is a ledger she consults often. Friends notice her sudden quietness, the way she pans conversations back to you. She tests people in subtle ways, fishing for praise, hoping someone will mention what she thinks you lost. When comparison becomes ritual, it outlives logic. She carries a checklist in her head, ticking off qualities she thinks no one else holds. It becomes a measure she uses to grade new partners and herself. That internal scoreboard influences choices. Prizes become illusions because standards are now idealized, not lived. The effect is paradoxical. Ideals keep her from moving forward. Her social feed becomes a ritualized battleground. She scrolls like a scout on patrol, cataloging moments that betray your peace. She pauses, freezes images, rereads captions for hidden meanings. She imagines conversations that never happened and scripts comebacks that will never be tested. This habitual surveillance is addictive and corrosive. It keeps wounds raw. Conversations she has with prospective lovers are full of tests. She asks questions that are thinly veiled probes. Compatibility becomes interrogation. Intimacy is measured against a ghost. New partners feel compared rather than welcomed. The inevitable result is disappointment for both sides. Men grow resentful, she grows resentful back. The cycle feeds itself. Comparison triggers a defense mechanism. Idealization. Memories get filtered until they shimmer. The thorny, difficult parts slide into shadow while bright moments are blown up like neon signs. She chases a memory that no longer exists in full. The memory, edited, becomes a story told in first person to justify longing. At some point the practice demands accountability. Either she relinquishes the scoreboard and allows people to be who they are, or she doubles down and builds a life of perpetual second best. Letting go is practical work. It requires smaller daily shifts, less posturing, more presence. It is quieter, harder, and rarer than performance. If she chooses humility, genuine connection becomes possible. Without the constant metric, she can see new people as themselves, not as echoes. Real intimacy blooms when comparisons stop. Otherwise, she remains trapped in an endless audition for a role that closed long ago. Change requires small, steady acts every single day until habit replaces hurt and she no longer checks the ledger or regrets. She won't always announce herself clearly. Often it begins as a small nudge, a message timed for vulnerability, a photo that looks accidental but isn't. Those nudges are fishing lines. They test whether you still feel the tug. If you don't take the bait, she escalates. If distance persists, she tries other routes. At first the probes are private and tentative. An old memory text. A seemingly casual question about a song. A comment on a story that reads friendly but contains a request. These moves are designed to provoke a response without admitting need. They are calibrated to look like coincidence and feel like pressure. When private nudges fail, the method shifts to social channels. Mutual friends get subtle cues. Shared spaces become opportunities. She times appearances where familiarity might loosen your guard. Proximity is a blunt instrument but still effective when intimacy has roots. She uses it to see if the pattern can be restored out of context. Public gestures follow when private paths close. A caption that hints at growth. A post that frames life as changed. She uses visibility as leverage, knowing others will notice and perhaps tell you. These performances aim not for authenticity but for momentum. She wants noise to create a crack. If performance falters, she leans into contrition. A message that admits fault. A confession about mistakes. She offers vulnerability as currency, hoping honesty buys access. It reads like repair but sometimes it's theater. A calculated currency exchange disguised as growth. When contrition is ignored, she resorts to pressure through story and network. Mutual acquaintances hear softer versions of her truth. Friends are nudged to act as bridges. Conversations are crafted to place your name in sympathetic contexts. She builds a narrative outside your presence, hoping the story finds its way back. At every turn there's an underlying demand, prove you still care. She measures reaction and decides the next move. Tests that once worked become redundant. You respond one way and she analyzes 3 moves ahead. Her strategy is iterative now. Adjust, observe, iterate. Some attempts land. Small replies can reopen channels. Old chemistry can resurface in a late-night thread. Those flickers tempt her to push harder. She mistakes sporadic warmth for a renaissance and accelerates. That acceleration often collapses the fragile progress because people cannot be obligingly rewired overnight. Other attempts fail spectacularly. Silence or short responses peel away hope. The lack of reciprocation is a clearer signal than any speech. It reveals whether the space she wants to reclaim still exists or has been replaced by new territory. Clarity arrives through absence. If she truly seeks repair, the work is unsexy and slow. It requires consistency, not spectacle. It demands boundaries and maturity. It needs repeated small acts over time. Anything else is theater meant to win headlines, not hearts. Either way, the probes expose intention. They tell you whether she wants to revisit or simply reassert control. Pay attention to rhythm, not rhetoric. Patterns reveal truth. Watch for patience. Genuine returns show up as steady, unperformative presence. Anything urgent and flashy is likely a rehearsal, not redemption. Time separates method from meaning. Let consistency, not spectacle, define a genuine comeback. She faces a mirror that doesn't flatter. The reflection is inconvenient. Habits and holes she ignored are obvious. No one else caused that picture. It is the product of choices she made. This truth isn't drama from you, it's an honest snapshot she earned. It arrives in quiet hours and empty rooms. The main question lands plain. Who are you when attention no longer defines you? She grabs at distractions. Busier weekends, louder routines, curated mornings. Noise works for a while. It never outlasts the quiet. When the cover drops, the same question returns with weight. Real answers take slow work, not flashy fixes. Owning mistakes means naming them without excuses. She must admit the time she pulled away and the time she treated steadiness like an option. Ownership is not a one-time speech. It is repeated small acts over ordinary weeks. It shows in punctuality, in responses when promises were easy to break, in consistency when no one applauds. Proof matters more than pleas. Onlookers will watch the pattern. Some cheer steps, Others stay guarded. Skepticism is reasonable. Trust is earned at the pace of action, not the speed of words. If she wants meaningful re-entry, she must accept outside measures, not just her own hope. Humility becomes real power. It doesn't headline feeds. It changes choices quietly. She trades dramatic gestures for daily corrections. She swaps public declarations for private fidelity to new standards. Gradual shifts add up. Tiny changes reconstruct character. Old instincts will nag. Self-justifying stories return like comfortable scripts. She trains to notice those narratives and stop them. Discipline becomes saying no to ease in favor of long-term value. The work is boring, repetitive, and the only thing that counts. New relationships will feel unfamiliar at first. Less spectacle, more substance. She meets people who reciprocate steadiness. That rarity makes these bonds valuable. Most mistake intensity for meaning. Few invest in constancy. Choosing differently requires patience and selective presence. Failing to change means repeating patterns. Longing doesn't erase consequence. Regret without reform only prolongs the cycle. Life keeps moving. Calendars don't pause for second chances. People learn and leave as seasons turn. If she commits, transformation spreads beyond romance. Friendships improve. Work ethic strengthens. Self-respect deepens. Small acts compound into a quieter life that no longer hinges on someone else's orbit. The payoff is not immediate applause but a sustained shift inside. Accountability becomes relief. When blame turns into responsibility, wasted energy dissolves. She can redirect that power into building steadiness. That muscle preserves her from collapsing back into old roles. At the end of this process, she finds an unexpected freedom, becoming someone who is whole whether noticed or not. That version is not built from performance. It's grown from repeated, unremarkable acts that, over time, make indifference impotent and presence meaningful. She learns to keep promises even when inconvenient. She shows up for appointments, answers without delay, and honors plans made in private. Small courtesies replace grand confessions. She practices patience when provoked and restraint when tempted. Slowly these gestures build a new credibility. People notice steadiness because it accumulates into reputation. Reputation then opens doors that borrowed charm never could. It changes everything over time. You were not punished by loud words or spectacle. You rebuilt in the quiet, piece by patient piece. Pain translated into practice. Small improvements reframed the past without malice. You stopped proving yourself and started producing results. Change didn't arrive as a climax. It arrived in mornings you honored, promises kept when no one watched, the steady rhythm of discipline replacing drama. Transformation rarely needs fanfare. Real change is accumulative. Unremarkable decisions stack into an unshakable identity. You worked in the margin where attention is thin and payoff is invisible. That work created a presence that no longer required explanation. It simply existed. She expected a spectacular unraveling because that fit her story. Instead, she found a man who moved forward without announcement. Forward motion dissolves old claims. When growth outlives grievance, it erodes leverage. Her narrative loses traction because life answers differently now. It offers consequence as a redirect. You were not vindictive. You were intentional. You stopped negotiating your value and started guarding your standards. Boundaries replaced bargaining. Calm replaced outrage. That posture clarifies. It teaches without malice. It closes doors that redundancy kept open. Replacement wasn't merely romantic. It was philosophical. You invested in purpose, not just people. You filled hours with meaningful labor and quieter joys. That new allocation of energy attracted those tuned to the same frequency. The woman who once orbited your days now watches a system she cannot enter. That realization carries weight. There is elegance to becoming the kind of man not easily disturbed by absence. He carries reserves of confidence that make drama look small. He refuses to dramatize his recovery. He shows up as proof instead of demand. That demonstration is the clearest message you can send. When she compares, the contrast highlights deficit, not abundance. Men she meets are louder and shallower. That contrast becomes a teacher. If she chooses to learn, the cost of her lesson is time. If she invests effort, redemption is possible. If she chooses surface fixes, she repeats scenes. You moved from proving to providing. You moved from craving validation to producing value. That shift rewrites who notices you and who you become. Purpose refuses to shrink for others. That refusal is liberating. Forgiveness is optional. Return is conditional. Doors may open on terms that require proof. Words are cheap. Actions are the currency that redeems regret. If she returns, she must bring consistent behavior, not a single speech. You leave space for change, but you do not wait suspended. Your life continues. Standards remain. The past is teacher, not tether. When someone shows up differently, you consider, weigh, and do not leap. You value alignment over nostalgia. If she never learns, that is her loss. If she does, she will meet a different man, not the one she remembers, but the one you became. Either outcome is acceptable because you are no longer defined by who chose poorly. You are defined by what you built. Keep watching. Keep the standards high. Growth wants discipline. Discipline demands patience. Patience produces results that silence every regret and reveal true value every day. Subscribe for more real talk.